The wait is over, and the 2024 college football season is finally here. This weekend, all eyes turn to Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas as Brian Kelly's LSU Tigers face off against USC this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Central. For one last look before kickoff, on today's episode, we're going to have a final scouting report on the Trojans as Jeff Palermo, Todd, Horne, and Guilbeau welcome Ryan Abraham, the owner and publisher of USCFootball.com, who has covered the Trojans for over 20 years. The Tiger Rag Radio crew pick his brain on the current state of USC football to get a better idea of what fans can expect out of the season opener this Labor Day weekend. So let's get right to it. I'm your host, Jake McMains, and we'll hear from Abraham right after this message from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Mike Munnerlin, and we're here to smash the capital city's trash.
Smash My Trash is a revolutionary compactor for large dumpsters, sometimes reducing the volume of waste by up to 70%. This means fewer hauls per month and big savings for your business. Fewer hauls and compacted waste will also result in a positive impact on our community and our environment by taking up less space in our local landfill sites. Schedule your company's free demo today. Call 225-497-0101.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches.
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
The players.
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, man.
The recruits.
Show some passion and some heart.
And those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the SEC.
All those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU talk.
What a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and our hosts, Todd Horne and Jeff Palermo.
Three great players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio.
Hey, welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau with Todd Horne and Jeff Palermo, and we're talking to sports writer Ryan Abraham, who covers USC for USCFootball.com under 247 Sports. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I can't wait for college football this weekend. It was great to get a little week zero, kind of a little jolt of college football, but now we're going to get just inundated, drinking from a fire hose all weekend. It should be great.
How does LSU rank as far as some of USC's bigger non-conference openers?
Yeah, no, they've had some good ones over the years, but this is definitely, highly up there. I mean, it's great that they have the long-standing rivalry with Notre Dame, so they're used to having at least one big out-of-conference game, but they've had Alabama and some other teams like that in the past. They've played Texas, but having LSU with a lot of history that was there, they haven't played each other for a long time. I think that's a really good one. It should be a lot of fun, especially because there's so many similarities between the two teams. The last two Heisman winners came from those schools, so it should be a lot of fun. And the fact that it's in Vegas, I think, for LA fans, they can hop on the freeway and get there in 4 hours or do a quick flight. I think people are going to really enjoy it.
Disappointing 8-5 season for Lincoln Riley last year with Caleb Williams. How much pressure do you think he is under going into this season?
I don't think it's been the narrative for sure. I don't think he's really under a lot of pressure. I think for one thing, for his own sake, I think he wants to win, and I think from the fan base, but nothing where if he had a bad season, would USC be looking to get rid of him? I just think, he signed this massive contract. USC hasn't gone out and hired a proven head coach for like 100 years. It was like Howard Jones in the 20s, someone who won like a national championship at Yale. They just haven't hired anyone that you knew was successful as a college head coach. Pete Carroll was an NFL guy. They've hired a lot of guys that you hope would work.
And John Robinson, when John Robinson got hired, he was an assistant at USC. Is that right?
He was an assistant. Yeah.
Right.
John McKay.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So they haven't hired someone that was proven. And Lincoln Riley hasn't won a national championship, but he, won Heisman trophies, went to the college football playoff multiple times. So as far as resume goes, he's the best guy they've hired in 100 years. So he has a big contract. I don't think USC, the administration, would do anything, if he goes 5-7 or 6-6. I mean, maybe a year or two from now, but I don't think this year he's under administrative pressure. But I think there's a lot of pressure from the fan base. A lot of fans don't like, they want to get back to the student body left, student body right stuff, so they didn't like the hire to begin with. And it was a great first year, just not a great second year. So I think there's some pressure there, but it's maybe not the kind of pressure like the administration would do something. They're not going to make a move. If anything moves, it's going to be Lincoln Riley's choice. So I think there's pressure there, but mostly from the fans and probably internally.
Ryan, whenever you look at the matchup between USC and LSU, you mentioned the similarities with the quarterbacks, but there's another big similarity, and that is they both basically sucked on defense last year. And there's, they both brought in new defensive coordinators, and in LSU's case, spent a lot of money revamping the whole staff. Do you think the game's going to come down to which team plays better defense, or do you think there's more to it than that?
I think that's where you're going to see the biggest swings, I would think. I mean, I think both teams will have some sort of drop-off offensively. I mean, some of the skill guys that LSU lost, I mean, replacing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback is never going to be easy, but I think they're both still going to have potent offenses. So I think the biggest swing is like how good LSU can be, to me, is going to be about how much better does the defense get. And I think USC's in the same boat. They're going to go as far as their improvement on defense. If you're ranked 100th in the country and you get to like 80, okay, that's an improvement, but that's not much. But if you can get to the top half, and what we saw from D'Anton Lynn, the guy that USC hired from UCLA, they were like 100 and they got into like the top 20 in 1 year. So that's the kind of, if you can do something like that, I think you can have a massive improvement. So for me, which team addressed their defensive needs better? And I think a lot of it schematically, and there's talent there, for both sides of the ball, but they just underperformed. And I think both teams tried to go out and get some big splash defensive tackles in the portal, and both weren't able to do so. We saw like the Oregons, the Miamis of the world kind of clean up on those guys. But you still, everyone brought in pieces. You have a whole new staff. So that improvement on the defensive side, to me, is what's going to determine the game. If LSU improved a little or a lot, I think that's going to, determine how they're going to do for the season. Same thing for USC.
So when I look at the USC roster, or depth chart, I should say, and I don't know if this is the most accurate depth chart. You can correct me on that, but there appears to be 10 transfers of the 11 defensive starters. Is that accurate?
I mean, there's a potential for a lot of starters that are going to come in as transfers, but they have some guys that played last year. I wouldn't say 10 would be not accurate for me. I think for like on the in the linebacker spot, 2 or 3 of the guys, it depends on what the rotation is going to be. They were in the program last year, but a guy like Easton Mascarenas Arnold comes in from Oregon State, so he'll probably. But Mason Cobb, Eric Gentry were here. They could be, listed as like co-starters. They brought in a bunch of guys in the secondary, and they have a bunch of guys already. So it's going to depend on how that rotation kind of goes. And I think, Bear Alexander was on the team last year. He's probably going to be one of the starters inside. Kobe Pepe could potentially be one of the internal starters. At defensive end, a guy like Jamil Muhammad got a lot of run last year, and Anthony Lucas. So I don't think it would be that many, but depending on, I think you could see rotations where, 8 or 9 guys are transfers, but there's going to be a bunch of guys. But the core of it will be players that returned from last season, and they tried to add some pieces to help with that.
Did you were you able to get any insight in fall camp as to how well the defense actually progressed, and see what Lynn is doing? Is he having success so far, or what do you know about that?
Yeah, so that's a big question that everyone wants to know. We got to watch 2 full practices. One of them was not in pads, but most of the time we're in there for stretching, and then we're kind of out. I think, but from what we were able to see, and then being able to talk to the players and coaches through the off season and through fall camp, the attitude seems a lot different. I mean, even the players that were new, the transfers coming in, they kind of understood the chip on the shoulder that a lot of the defensive players have, because, like you said, the defense basically sucked, and that's where that everyone was pointing to why this team was terrible, bad at the last stretch of the season was because of the defense. And I think a lot of those players took it personally. And one of the things that, you saw USC doing, the players would be looking at their wristbands as the ball was being snapped, trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. And to me, you got to play fast in college football. You can't be thinking all the time. And it just seemed like game after game, that was one of the Achilles heels for this defense. And now they're, playing faster. And there's a lot of buzzwords you get in fall camp, but it did seem like there was just a lot of confusion. So good athletes weren't able to go make plays because they were trying to figure out what they were supposed to be doing. And I think just eliminating that, the confidence you're getting from the players and coaches seems to be a lot higher. So I think there's a lot of optimism, but the proof's going to be in the pudding. You got to see what they do. If they still give up, big run plays all the time and third and longs and all that, like everything you saw last year, then all that talks for naught. But just from what we were hearing and the little bit of what we'd be able to see, it does seem like there's some significant improvements that were being made.
We're talking with Ryan Abraham from USCFootball.com here on Tiger Rag Radio with Glenn Guilbeau, myself, Todd Horne, and Jeff Palermo. Well, that's great that they let you watch the stretching. I know how valuable that is as a reporter at practice. Deion Sanders has been in the news lately for banning a reporter. That's what I talked to you about last season when Lincoln or USC banned a reporter and had some issues with the media. How has it been so far this camp? Cody Worsham, who used to be at LSU, is in the athletic department there now. Has there been any changes with the media from your perspective?
It's been about the same. I think when Riley came in, they were very closed off. Everyone I talked to that covered him in Norman, and USC's just been more of an open program. So I think they've tried to marriage that together. When he went after, the Orange County Register reporter last year, and that got cleared up and they fixed it. Just that kind of stuff I don't think you need to do. There wasn't the LA media has a lot of other things to cover, and I think that's one of the problems is if you're a college team, if you try to close things down, there's Lakers, there's Dodgers, there's Kings, there's, whatever you want to do, there's plenty of other things that you can cover. And I think you're fighting for eyeballs more than anything. It's a very professionally sports oriented town, and you want to get back to those glory days. You can't have, going after reporters and things like that. But I think things have been, pretty good on that front. I think they're, working with us, trying to get us a little bit more access. And it's kind of it's been a little bit of a slow process, but I think we still get to talk to a lot of players and coaches and stuff every week. So as long as that keeps going on, it's good for us that, we can do our jobs, but, you never know. College football is changing all the time, and I'm sure how the access for media across the country can be changing as well. But it's not been bad. That's been the one kind of weird incident, I guess, that's happened.
Hey, Ryan, shifting to USC's offense, there's a similarity between Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier, as you discussed earlier, both redshirt juniors, both longtime members of the program. But if I'm not mistaken, Lincoln Riley is still going to run the air raid. In fact, does he even know another offense to run? And if that's true, is Miller Moss going to be able to fill the bill, in your opinion? I know he had a great bowl game, but do you think that'll carry over?
Yeah, so I think, he has a background, Lincoln Riley, with the Mike Leach tree, but it's definitely been a different version of it. I think we've seen when Graham Harrell was around, he had a little bit different version. I think what Graham Harrell ran at USC was probably closer to what Mike Leach was running. And I think Lincoln Riley, it's a little bit different. He's had some 1,000-yard rushers when he was at Oklahoma. They've used tight ends more than a Mike Leach team would do. So it's kind of a version of that, but I wouldn't say it's like a full-on air raid. I think what Miller Moss will do is probably follow the recipe of the offense and what the reads are and kind of follow what the play call is a little bit more than what Caleb Williams did. He was so good, Caleb Williams, at improvising and coming up with, if a play looks like it's breaking down a little bit, figuring out something else to do. I think what we saw in the Holiday Bowl when Miller Moss threw 6 touchdowns, it was a thing where he was, making the reads and finding the open guy and getting the ball to him. He's athletic enough. He can move around a little bit, not as much as Caleb Williams for sure, but I think you're going to see him, with a couple years of learning this offense. He's a really smart kid. Seems to understand it well, and the players are following well. So I think he'll be fine, running Lincoln Riley's version of the offense, but it's going to look different. I think you're going to not see as much improvising that we saw with Caleb Williams with Miller Moss.
That's Ryan Abraham from USCFootball.com. Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us here on Tiger Rag Radio.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
More of Tiger Rag Radio when we come back.
Join the East Baton Rouge Parish Library for inspiring events in August. Celebrate the power of storytelling with a presentation by the accomplished author of the Jaipur trilogy, Alka Joshi. Listen to fascinating stories based on DNA and genetic genealogy at our Decoding Stories Symposium. And learn about the history of Baton Rouge with photographs from the library's digital archive. Visit ebrpl.com for information on these programs and many more. Get inspired in August.
All right, that'll be it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Ryan Abraham for the discussion. We'll be back next week, but until then, stay tuned to TigerRag.com for all your latest LSU sports news.